Zeljko Raznatović was born in Bresice, a small border town in Slovenian Styria. His father, Veliko Raznatović, served as a decorated officer in the SFR Yugoslav Air Force, earning high rank for his notable World War II involvement on the partisan side, and was stationed in Slovenia Styria at the time of Zeljko's birth. He spent part of his childhood in Zagreb and Pančevo before his father's job eventually took the family to the Yugoslav capital of Belgrade, which Raznatović considered his hometown. Raznatović grew up in Belgrade with 3 older sisters in a strict, militaristic household with regular beatings administered by his father. In a 1991 interview, he recalled, "He didn't really hit me in a classical sense. He'd basically grab me and slam me against the floor." In his youth, Raznatović aspired to become a pilot, as his father had been. Due to the highly demanding and significant positions of his parents, there appeared to be very little time in which a bond was able to be established between parents and children. His parents eventually divorced during his teenage years. Arkan was smart, but often skipped classes, and in his early teens, he started to get involved in petty crime. In 1966, and at the age of 14, he was arrested for the first time and sent to a juvenile detention centre. After 1 year of imprisonment, his father wanted to send him to the military, but Arkan escaped to Paris. After he came back in 1969, he got involved in several burglaries, for which he was arrested and sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. In prison, the charismatic Arkan formed his own gang. He was tall, strong, and looked well after himself. He was always neat and clean and well dressed. According to Stewart's, who wrote a book about Arkan, unlike many other criminals, Arkan didn't drink or smoke, and for some reason, he made people follow him. Shortly after he was released from prison in 1972, he was arrested once again. This time he was charged with armed burglary. In 1972, aged 20, he re-migrated to Western Europe. Abroad, he got introduced to and kept contact with many well-known criminals from Yugoslavia, such as Zemunac, Ranko Robecic, Giska, and Goran Vukovic, all of who were also occasionally contracted by the Yugoslav Secret Service, and all of who were since assassinated or otherwise killed. He took the nickname Arkan from one of his forged passports. On December 28, 1973, he was arrested in Belgium following a bank robbery and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He managed to escape from the Verviers prison on the 4th of July 1979. Although Raznatović was rearrested in the Netherlands on the 24th of October 1979, the few months he was free were enough for at least 2 more armed robberies in Sweden and 3 more in the Netherlands. Serving a 7-year sentence at a prison in Amsterdam, he pulled off another escape on the 8th of May 1981 after someone slipped him a gun. Wasting no time at all, more robberies followed, this time in Germany, where after less than a month of freedom, he was arrested in Frankfurt on the 5th of June 1981, following a jewelry store stick-up. In the ensuing shootout with police, he was lightly wounded, resulting in his placement in the prison hospital ward, where looser security allowed him to escape again only 4 days later, on June the 9th, supposedly by jumping from the window, beating up the first bystander, and stealing his clothing before disappearing. His final European arrest occurred in Basel, Switzerland, during a routine traffic check on the 15th of February 1983. However, he managed to escape again within months, this time from Torberg prison on the 27th of April. It is widely speculated that Raznatović was closely affiliated with the Yugoslav Security Service, UDBA, throughout his criminal career abroad. In his youth, Raznatović had been a ward of his father's friend, the Slovenian politician and Federal Minister of the Interior, Stane Dolanc. Dolanc was chief of the secret police and a close associate of the Yugoslav president, Tito. Whenever Raznatovic was in trouble, Dolanc helped him, allegedly as a reward for his services to the Yugoslav Secret State Police, UDBA, as seen in the escape from the Lugano prison in 1981. Dolanc is quoted as having said, "One Arkan is worth more than the whole UDBA put together." He had convictions and warrants in Belgium, the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Austria, Switzerland and Italy. In Sweden particularly, he was suspected for 20 burglaries and 7 bank robberies, prison escape and an attempted murder. Raznatovic returned to Belgrade in May 1983, continuing his criminal career by opening a number of illegal businesses. In November 1983, 6 months after his return, a bank in Zagreb got robbed with the robbers leaving a rose on the counter, allegedly Raznatovic's signature from his Western European robberies. As a result, 2 federal policemen, members of the Secret of Internal Affairs, 10th Department, showed up in civilian clothing looking for Arkan at his mother's apartment on 27 March Street, Belgrade. Raznatovic was not there, so his mother called him and said that 2 unknown males were waiting for him. He showed up with a revolver and proceeded to shoot and wound both policemen. He shot the first one on the spot, while the other one got shot trying to flee the scene. Arkan was detained immediately. However, barely 48 hours later, he got released. The occurrence made it clear to all observers that he enjoyed protection from the highest places in SFR Yugoslavia as a result of his involvement with the state security. Enjoying immunity at home, Arkan reportedly still made occasional robbing excursions to Western Europe, such as the one in January 1984, when he reportedly wounded 2 Swedish policemen who pulled him over following a robbery in Gothenburg. He spent the mid-1980s running a disco club, Amadeus, located in the Tasmanian neighbourhood. The club was reportedly another perk of their contractual work for the security service. Raznatovic also had friendly relations with Russian ultra-nationalist politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky. Arkan became an untouchable criminal figure in Belgrade and all of the former Yugoslavia. He was really so powerful, so strong financially, that no one could do anything about him. In 1993, I learned that Arkan had in Belgrade kidnapped and taken to Erdut and there killed Isa Lero, also a man from the criminal underground who had come into conflict with Arkan. I even found a witness to the murder. I publicly accused Arkan. I submitted a report to the police. The police inspectors came to see me. We talked about it. I gave them all the information I had, but then the police inspector told me that they were aware of it, but that they were unable to prove it because of the fear among the potential witnesses. So the police were quite well informed about his criminal activities, but it was very hard to prove anything or to bring charges because his support network was so widespread, and this can be shown through various newspaper articles and so on. In one television statement, I told him when we were debating on TV that he had pulled a sock over his head more often than I had pulled one on my feet. It is believed that in 1974, and when robbing a restaurant, Arkan, aged 21, shot and killed the owner, thus committing his first murder. Since this incident, and in the early 70s, Arkan's father used all his military contacts to help Arkan get a job within the secret services, probably in an effort to get him out of the criminal circles in which he featured. Arkan then became one of the hitmen within these services. His task was to assassinate political opponents and dissidents abroad, and according to Stewart, he was one of many hitmen, as in the years of 1965 to 1990, over 100 Yugoslavian dissidents were killed by such hitmen. It is alleged that Arkan killed the first 2 people in 1979 and 1981, and another 5 to 10 in the following years. All these years, the Secret Service provided Arkan with money, weapons, and false documents, and help whenever he got into trouble. And in the meantime, Arkan would continue to rob banks. He was often caught and arrested, but he often managed to escape from prison. The bank robberies had made him rich, and Arkan enjoyed the money and status he had gained by now. In this period, he had at least 3 children with 3 different women. His oldest son was born in 1975 in Sweden. Later, in 1992, age 17, his son joined him in Serbia to fight with him. Throughout the 90s and the bloody civil wars that split Yugoslavia, Arkan went on to create his own paramilitary group, a private army mainly made up with football hooligans and gangsters. Arkan recruited his thugs in jails and from among soccer hooligans supporting Red Star Belgrade, a team fan club he owned. The bloodlust of Arkan's Tigers made them the most feared, brutal unit in the Serbian murder machine. The Tigers were the arrowhead of ethnic cleansing, the systematic killing first of Croatians and then Bosnia's Muslims. He was charming, extremely smart, and deceptively evil, says journalist Ron Haviv after meeting him. Egotistical, baby-faced, and he considered himself the saviour of the Serbian people. He was a likeable guy, except that he was a pathological killer. The unit's most heinous crimes were committed as the hurricane of Serbian violence crossed into eastern Bosnia. The Tigers swept into unsuspecting towns, villages, and communities, raping, beating, torturing, and killing. Arkan's name became a calling card for atrocity. During the bloodbath, Arkan, wearing designer suits, would take rest and refreshment in Belgrade, where people hailed him as a hero, but on the battlefield, he always led his troops from the front into battle. During the wars, Arkan increased his wealth by creating trafficking routes with his connections on the black market, smuggling loot taken from villages and towns his army had liquidated. In March 1999, Arkan was indicted by the ICTY on 24 charges of crimes against humanity, including genocide. However, this did not seem to faze the now Warlord despite frequent NATO bombings taking place in downtown Belgrade. He would be seen out and about, giving interviews, going around his usual business, and also created his own far-right political party and became president of football club Obilic, who managed to win the league and enter the Champions League in the 2 years with Arkan at the helm. However, accusations of bribery, match-fixing, blackmail and referee assassinations surrounded the club and the meteoric rise from the second tier to top flight winners at the time. He also married Serbian mega pop star Ceca in a fairy tale wedding that was broadcast live on air, and it was a media spectacle. Overnight, they became the new power couple of Serbia, with the nickname in the West being the Beauty and the Beast. Ceca herself was also not so squeaky clean, with her being investigated for fraud, embezzlement and organisation in the murder of former Serbian Prime Minister Dindic. Raznatovic was assassinated on Saturday the 15th of January 2000 in the lobby of the New Belgrade Hotel Continental, in a location where he was surrounded by other hotel guests. He was shot 3 times in the face at close range and was pronounced dead en route to the hospital. And that's how the violent life of one of the most notorious figures of the criminal underworld ended, in the same way he removed countless others from this world.